Welcome to this very strange first episode of the soon-to-be titled podcast, One Day. My name is Kat, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Jessica.
Jessica? Catherine?
Yeah, we're going to full name each other this whole time.
Yeah.
Everyone get used to it.
Yeah, it's going to be very formal.
But we wanted to essentially come on here and do this kind of intro episode to what might be called the Cozy Gamer Cast. We're not really sure, but maybe that's what it's called by the time you watch this. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe we can ask people if they're like, what do you think of Cozy Gamer Cast?
Oh my god, yeah. Can we please outsource this? Because we've tried. We've gone through every iteration.
Can we have external approval, please?
Someone just give us an idea and we can run with it. I don't want to think about it anymore.
Yeah. Names are the worst.
But so we had this idea that we wanted to essentially make a little podcast about indie games and specifically both of our loves for cozy gaming and what it means and kind of how we've discovered it in our adult lives. And it's going to look different, I think, now compared to 6 months from now. But our plan is really to just explore indie games we love, talk about some of the really cool stuff happening in the industry, maybe even talk to a couple devs. That would be cool. And really focus on some themes we're seeing kind of arise in the space. What might be good is if we introduce ourselves a little bit more for anyone who doesn't already know us.
Because we're so famous and we're such a huge
Clearly
deal.
Everyone should know who we are.
Yeah. Well, my name is Jessica. No, but everybody calls me Jess. My name on the internet is Jessie's Haunted. And I'm mostly a content creator on Twitch. Although I really hope to, do some content outside of Twitch soon. I discovered cozy gaming and all that first for Instagram. I started doing photographs of my games and my Switch and all that cute stuff. And then I moved on to Twitch and I've been mostly playing horror games or spooky games or games with dark themes and stuff like that. Kind of going with the theme of Jessie's Haunted. I used to be called Games Are Haunted before, but I also play anything that is indie games that sound interesting to me. And I just love indie gaming. I think it's so much more fascinating than mainstream gaming right now. So yeah, that's also why I wanted to join this lovely podcast and just, explore more of that.
Yeah, for sure. If you don't know me, my name is Kat, or Catherine, if you'd please.
Catherine.
And I go by Cozy Gamer Cat here on the internet. Similar story, Jess and I actually met through the cozy gaming space on Instagram. We were both kind of posting cute photos of our Switches and stuff, and I knew that Jess was one of the few of us in that space that had started streaming on Twitch, and I had kind of been considering that I wanted to do either Twitch or YouTube, and I just wasn't sure which of those to do. My main thing with YouTube is I don't want to have to edit anything.
Yeah, same.
That seems stressful.
Yeah, I have no idea how to start.
Exactly, and clicking go live is stressful, but it's much simpler technologically speaking than editing stuff. But so I essentially, Jess was the first person I started watching on Twitch, and I quickly grew obsessed with the space. And so we've known each other, what now, 2.5 years?
Yeah,
3 years?
I think maybe 2.5. I think it sounds right.
Crazy.
I think we met in February or something like that of 2021.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So during the pandemic, we were all trying to find online spaces, and the cozy gaming space at that time with Animal Crossing was bumping, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So I think both of our journeys kind of took off from that point, finding Twitch, finding those communities, and kind of making friends through that. Nowadays, I do in fact create content on YouTube. It happened eventually. I focus mainly on the cozy indie space and giving people recommendations, let's plays, that kind of stuff. I also have a podcast. Or not a podcast, a newsletter, I should say.
Give us a like, click our Spotify link.
Yeah, exactly. And now I also work in the indie game space as an influencer manager. So it's definitely changed. I started in the pandemic working in the environmental sector, started streaming on Twitch, and now my career in life has changed
Yeah,
significantly.
completely.
But very glad to have met each other, and now we get to finally do a project together, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
And feels like the beginning of a new era almost.
Oh my God. I'm excited. I'm nervous right now, but like, it's fine. Good nervous.
Yeah. So I guess what I would love to know, and I do know this because I've known you a long time, but
Yeah, but
I'd
we're
love for
gonna
them to get to
pretend.
hear.
Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
pretend we don't know each other.
Exactly. How did you get into gaming? Like, what was your kind of gaming journey?
Well, I don't know for how many women it is like this, because I think that gaming, especially if we grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, wasn't like a thing that was like associated with girls.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't back home for me. I'm from Venezuela
Mm-hmm.
originally, but it was for my brother. The first console that he had was a PlayStation 1,
Mm.
and it was his console, it wasn't mine. But every time
Yeah.
that he would, find a new game to play or whatever, he would invite me over to his bedroom to like watch the game and like maybe
Mm.
tell him hints, or like if he was stuck at a puzzle, I would like chime in and be like, hey, I think you need to do this. And I was like 8 years old or 7 years old or something like that.
Why are men so useless at puzzle games? I must know this.
I hadn't thought about it, but yeah.
We're always sitting there helping them with the puzzles. I see how it is.
Yeah. You know, that how do you call it? That see, this is the problem with no being native. No, but that dynamic of like playing with someone else and slowly beating the game together, like with the efforts of both people, it was something that I had throughout all my childhood. Like we always did that. Every game that he played, I would like be there and we would like beat it together, even though I was not grabbing the controller,
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cute because he would used to wait for me until I came back from school to like play.
Aw.
I would like, oh, did you finish playing? And he was like, no, I was waiting for you. We're still not over. Like, come over. We need to keep playing. I'm in this part that I don't know how to progress from. Yeah, I think that was the start for me. Like, to get into gaming, that was the start for me. We used to play a lot of Resident Evil games, and then eventually we started playing Metroid and Zelda games. And then the first game that I played myself on my own was Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, and it's a good one to start because it's like, it feels very epic. It feels like this huge adventure that you're like taking in. I don't know, it made me fall in love with gaming beyond just like being there for my brother,
Yeah.
And nowadays, it's just like I started streaming because I wanted to kind of replicate that experience of being there with someone and beating the game together, like kind of feeling that you both are thinking about what to do next. So that's why sometimes I don't mind backsitting.
Yeah.
Like,
I know what you
backsitting.
mean.
Yeah, you know backsitting when you see backsitting, when it's just like someone who's chiming in just because they want to tell you the answer, and then you have people who also don't know the game and who are also trying to figure it out with you. And I just find that so, I don't know, I just really like that that experience.
Yeah.
Of like,
I totally know what you mean. Some people, I feel like they have the wrong intentions. Like they're coming in because they want to make you feel stupid or something.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's that feeling of nostalgia, I think 90s kids, we all have, of like sitting around our GameCube or N64 or whatever it is and playing together and not having like online gaming at all at that point. Like the only way you could game with other people was next to each other on a couch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I totally get it. I think that's the exact same reason I like Twitch, is that feeling that you're like, I don't know, in a living room together playing your favorite games.
Yeah, I think maybe that's why it got so popular with our generation. Like, I don't know, maybe now Gen Z, or I don't know, younger people do use Twitch a lot. But I think back then we were the ones, like our generation was the ones who made it popular or who started using it more.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's a common experience that we all have of like gaming not being an individual activity or an individual hobby, but being something that you do with your friends.
Yeah.
And Twitch means that. So yeah, that's how I got into gaming. What about you?
Yeah, it's remarkable. I feel about this, a lot of the stuff we talk about is like we have very similar stories, and then almost like branch apart in later on. Because same thing. I grew up with two brothers, and they were both, I wouldn't say they were like gamers, like when I think of like the Call of Duty type people,
Yeah.
like they weren't really playing those types of games. They were mainly playing like a lot of like Animal Crossing and Zelda and that kind of stuff. Like especially my older brother was like really into Animal Crossing.
Oh.
So yeah, I grew up just watching them play and occasionally playing myself. My mom is also quite an avid gamer.
That's always been something so fascinating to me because my mom doesn't even know. She remembers some things like Mario and Zelda, but it was always so like, I don't know, far from her. Like she wasn't involved at all. But your
Yeah.
mom being a gamer, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, from what I know, my mom has always kind of been like that for a lot of things. Like when the TV started becoming a thing, she told me that like she would babysit for this specific family because they had cable. And
Okay.
she was like ahead of her time and that she wanted to watch like cable all day.
Yeah. Yeah, because that too, like they're from a generation so far away from gaming, from like the
Yeah.
first consoles. Like they were already adults when the first consoles came out, I think.
Exactly. And my mom was adamant when video games started becoming a thing that she was so interested in them, and it makes sense now. Like she works in film and stuff. I think she just like really liked media and entertainment, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, they always had like every console that was ever released. Like my mom had just gotten them because she was fascinated by it.
So lucky.
Yeah. Like she always tells me this story about how when I was at daycare, her and my brother were like sitting, I don't know, it must have been the original Super Nintendo that they were like trying to beat Mario together while I was having like my post daycare nap or whatever it was. So yeah, gaming has just always been a part of my family for that reason.
Yeah.
But similar thing where I was like, I didn't always feel very comfortable like playing games, and I feel like because of the 90s kid thing, and even despite the fact that my mom really liked video games, the games that I was playing was like Barbie,
Yeah,
like sports or whatever it was.
the Barbie sports game, that's like when
So
you
good.
yeah. No, like when I heard that you knew that game and that it was one of your favorites when you were a kid, I was like, we're the same person. We were the
we had
same person.
Same childhood.
I was obsessed with that game because I inherited the
God.
PlayStation 1 from my brother. And then I had it on in my room. So I would play the Barbie game like all night long. I was just staying up late, being a rebel for Barbie.
Yeah. It was just like a couple of those. I think Hamtaro was another one that was like really marketed towards women, and like for good reason. That game was incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah, I played a lot of Animal Crossing because my brother was really into it. But I don't think I played Zelda, but with my brothers, you know, like they would be playing Wind Waker or something, and yeah, I would help them with the puzzles because apparently men can't do puzzles. Don't know why. And then I'd pass the controller when it was a boss fight because I was frightened of them. But Ocarina of Time was actually also my first game that I like completed mainly on my own. Yeah. And then Wind Waker was the one where I was like, that's the first time I remember like being like, oh, video games are really cool, you know? And like having a moment of like, oh, maybe I should play more traditional games and not just like Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing and things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a similar thing of like very much 90s kid. I was big in Nintendo over the other consoles for sure, but we did have a PlayStation 1, so that's where I played like Barbie and things.
Yeah, me too. We had a PlayStation 1, but that was it. I didn't have a PlayStation 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. We went with the GameCube and then the Wii, and then we stopped for a little, and I got the Switch later.
My family was obsessed with having all the consoles.
I've always wanted to know what your mom's favorite game has always been.
That's a good question. From the sounds of it, like early days, she was quite into Mario and things. Yeah. But now it's Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like, if you want to find the expert on anything Animal Crossing New Horizons, my mother knows. She has, like, I think, like 1,000 hours in that game.
Oh my god, can she send me bells?
Yeah, honestly. On another level. She's also really into Disney Dreamlight Valley now.
Oh, okay.
Which is, I think, the natural progression of people who are obsessed with ACNH. They are now obsessed with Disney Dreamlight Valley.
We should have her over one day.
Can you imagine? She's going to be listening to this. That's the person she is.
Mom, thank you for listening.
And she's going to be, hell no.
No, but it would be really interesting because it's like, I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these documentaries about video games. I think it was one that was on Netflix. about
Mm.
how they realized that they weren't marketing for girls at all. So they started by doing this Pac-Man's girlfriend thing.
Oh yeah.
And it was like a game with Pac-Man's girlfriend. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the
Is it Miss
machines,
Pac-Man? What is her name? I don't
Miss
even know.
Pac-Man or something like that. Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
like all marketed. Like the machines were all girly colors, let's say, or like
Here's some pink and purple
yeah, pink and
ghosts
purple.
for you.
Yeah. It was marketed towards women. I mean, I don't know exactly the colors, but yeah, it's always funny because it's like I don't think that we needed that. I think women have always had this interest in games as well. It was just a matter of marketing, not a matter of like
Yeah.
natural interest on some things or others.
Like I definitely do feel like sometimes I can feel like almost a stereotype of what like the brands think a female gamer is because I'm like, no, I really
Yeah.
do enjoy farming sims and I don't always love games with combat.
Yeah.
But I think because we weren't marketed that kind of game growing up, I also had no idea of what those games were like. Like I was so petrified by games with guns for a long time. And then I played The Last of Us
Yeah.
on stream and it completely I was like, "Oh, I don't know what I was scared of. I just assumed I'd be bad at this."
Yeah.
You know? And then it would be
Yeah.
stressful and I don't have the hand-eye coordination for it and all this stuff. But you miss out on so much amazing content if you
Absolutely. Yeah.
don't step out of that. And Resident Evil was another one that you convinced me to play, and I'm really glad I did, despite the fact that it is too scary for me. It's too scary for me. But it was worth playing to like get that experience and realize that I was like, I'm not scared of the gameplay anymore like I was
Yeah.
before, I think.
Yeah, now that you say that, I've always been intimidated by battle royales and like
Yeah.
competitive games. And it's
Mhm.
exactly because of that, because I've never been like I'm scared of the gameplay. I'm like, no, I need to be like super fast and I am
Yeah.
a girl, so I can't be that fast. So I don't know, it's weird. It's weird because
Yeah.
it's just that we haven't tried it yet.
Exactly. Like I would love to try the Valorants and the Fortnites and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm terrified. Maybe this is just because we both have anxiety too.
Yeah, maybe
Like,
it has to do
I
a
don't
little
like
bit with
being
that.
bad at stuff. So I don't really like if I try and fail, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that competitive gaming for sure is a whole one I haven't even gotten over yet.
Yeah.
Because that does scare me too.
Yeah, and because you don't want to like let down your team, you have other people depending on you,
Yeah.
and it's like
You don't want to be the stereotype
yeah,
either.
exactly that, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just make a team of like
Yeah.
bad people who have never not bad people, like people who are bad at these games because they've never tried it, so none of us expect anything of each other.
Please help us become true gamers.
True competitive gamers and maybe make money out of it for once.
That actually kind of brings me to my next question because obviously we're both started our content creation career in the cozy gaming space, which is, I think, sometimes discussed in an interesting way where people assume it's a very like small and specific type of game. But I know both of us have kind of this feeling that cozy gaming is more than that. So I guess because this is called the Cozy Gamer Cast, and you'll notice quite quickly as we go through this podcast that we are not only covering farming simulations and traditional cozy games. And I guess this is a good time to ask, like, what does cozy gaming as a term mean to you?
The big question. The one question. I think when I first started, like, into this cozy gaming scene, I don't know about you, but I think it started for me with Animal Crossing. And I think, I don't know if I imagine that the term was used before Animal Crossing, but I think it definitely boosts the popularity of the term, like, a lot.
Yeah, definitely new even then, I think.
Yeah, very new even
but
then. Very few people were actually had accounts, for example, taking pictures of games and stuff like that. And you all knew, like I knew all of them. Like I kind of, it came to a point where I knew every account, even if I didn't follow all of them.
It was a nice small community.
Yeah, it was
at the
a small
beginning
community.
there.
Yeah. And to me, I felt a little out of place, maybe, because everybody was playing, of course, Animal Crossing, of course, Stardew Valley, any games that were similar to that, any farming games or sometimes not even farming games, but maybe like very story-based games that didn't have a lot of action or any
Mm.
action at all. And I was also playing those games, but I wanted to also take pictures of other games that I was playing, like horror
Yeah.
games, which I've always been very into. And it felt like, okay, so how do I make this cozy? So to me, visually, it was like, okay, I can make this. Okay, like maybe the cover of the game is not that cozy. It's very actually dark, and it's like Resident Evil
Mm.
Village, and it's like Ethan just like freezing in a British town or something like that. And I mean, I think it's in the UK, that
I
game.
love
I
that
don't know.
visual.
I don't know. It looks like it. And then so I just like, well, okay, the cover is not that cozy, but like I can put elements in it that are
Mm.
aesthetic and cozy and all of that. So like I would like put plants, and then I would like try to take my pictures the best that I could, and then I would just like write about the game.
Mhm.
But I felt like people maybe weren't as interested as
Yeah.
they were in seeing Animal Crossing posts and things like that.
Fighting the algorithm, which is
Yeah,
Instagram.
also that's just become worse over time.
Yeah.
So then that's like visually cozy. That's
Mm.
how it started for me. Like, okay, Instagram, cozy pictures,
Aesthetics,
yeah,
yeah.
aesthetic, nice to
Mhm.
look at. That's how it started for me. But then I think the concept expanded to like a whole genre of gaming, like a
Mhm.
subgenre of gaming. We've seen things like the wholesome games
Yeah. Or
community,
direct, yeah.
the direct,
Mhm.
where it seems like there's almost like a criteria for what institutes a
Mm.
cozy game. Like there are games that you're not gonna see in the wholesome direct, for example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For
So
sure.
it's definitely the kind of games. It seems like it is the kind of games that are maybe less action, less violence, maybe not at all, not any
Mm.
violence. A lot of farming, a lot of like lifestyle, a lot of slow-paced games. I think is what people mostly think about when they think about cozy
Yeah.
gaming. But I
Mhm.
think for you and me, um, we don't want to just play that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think the big thing for me, for
Yeah.
sure, that I found gaming and as an adult to be like a new way to look at things. And when I started on Instagram, for sure, I was interested in Animal Crossing, and for the first time I was finding out that there were all these other games that had been inspired by Harvest Moon and Animal
Mhm.
Crossing of my childhood, but they were in this indie gaming space, and
Yeah.
I had never really played any indie games, to be honest, before joining Instagram and that community there. And I played like Spiritfarer and Coffee
Mhm.
Talk, and I played Stardew Valley for the first time. And I realized I was like, oh my god, there's so many more
Yeah.
than I thought there were. Because I thought the options were like Animal Crossing, Mario, or Call of Duty,
Mhm.
Fortnite. Like I didn't realize there was so much in between.
Yeah.
For me, I started to realize as I found all these new games, is like actually my tastes were much more various than I thought they were. Like they're much more diverse. Like I didn't just want to play farming sims like I
Mhm.
thought I would. And yeah, I found that I actually quite liked platforming in some of these games, and I really liked puzzles.
Mhm.
And turns out Resident Evil has puzzles. It's
Yeah.
just in a horror setting.
Yeah.
And so I think it became really quickly for me that like cozy gaming was more of a way to game,
Yeah.
in that like I don't like to play a game that makes me want to throw a controller through the screen
Mm.
or makes me want to yell at someone on my team or something,
Yeah.
because I just don't enjoy that.
Mhm.
If I'm going to game, I want to be able to like put on a blanket and have my coffee or
Yeah.
something.
Now that you say that, it's also like an attitude. For
Mm.
example, I used to think of gaming like, oh my god, I need to complete as many games as fast as I can because I have so much backlog,
Mm.
and I want to play this game that everybody is talking about, and I want to play this game that everybody like loves. I felt pressured to play games like, I don't know, like Dark Souls, for example,
Yeah.
because everybody loved it, and I was like, oh, I should play it because I should know. And it's not like I have
Mm.
anything against it now, it's just I haven't found the time to play it. But
Yeah.
like I have the attitude now where it's like, I'm gonna play this game for as long as I want. I'm a tired girl now.
Yeah.
I'm old
We need
now.
our rest.
We need to rest. And so it's just like I turn the theme lights on in
Mm.
my room. I just sit down in the middle of the night and I play for as long as I can. And if I don't want to play it anymore, I just don't force myself to. If I want to quit a game and stop playing it, like I just do. You know, it's like this attitude of feeling like gaming is a comfort you can go to
Yeah.
and not like maybe like something that you need to be the best at, or you need to collect all the
Yeah.
trophies, or you need to necessarily, talk about how good you are or what rank you are or whatever.
Yeah, because I remember when I first played Breath of the Wild,
Mm-hmm.
I hated it
Yeah.
because it wasn't like the Zelda I grew up with, and I was like, "This is a
Yeah.
dumb game. This is a game for boys." um, but I got into it later and I actually properly played it, and I was obsessed. You know, the open world, once you learn to avoid the enemies and stuff,
Yeah.
is like an outrageously cozy because you can run around and do whatever you want and look at the cute little houses and things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually until I had finished my first playthrough of Breath of the Wild, and I was home for Christmas, and my brother had left his PlayStation 4 there for some reason. Like, he went off to college, and I don't know why he didn't take it with him. But it was just sitting there, and I was like, I want to find a game that's like Breath of the Wild. I need to like fill this void in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I played Horizon Zero Dawn
Yeah.
because it was like the first thing on Google that said, this is a game like
Yeah. Games like Breath of the Wild.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, I will play that. And it amazed me because not only is Horizon Zero Dawn just an incredible game, just amazing, but it was the first game I think I'd ever played with a female lead
Mm-hmm.
that was like a traditional video game, you
Yeah.
know? Maybe other than Metroid, but I was never a big Metroid player anyways.
Yeah, and Metroid,
Um,
she's
she's in a costume, yeah.
I found out that she was a girl like years later.
Yeah. Yeah. Feels like one of those things that they might have just done to sell video games to women. But
Yeah,
anyways.
exactly.
But yeah, so playing that game was amazing to me because it was the first, like, other than Zelda, game that wasn't like traditionally marketed towards women, but I had this story to follow where she was like going through a lot of the stuff that young women go through, and it was a hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of all the things I love about reading like a really good book,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where you just get so caught up in
Yeah.
the story. And
Yeah.
that was definitely the moment I realized that video games were like more than just like an exercise in
Yeah.
how quick you can press buttons and things.
Yeah.
And I think The Last of Us did that too for me, that it was just like,
Mhm.
it was still cozy, even though things that were happening in those games were stressful, because it felt like I was like meeting these characters and living in their shoes and
Yeah.
all the stuff that make video games special.
Yeah. I don't know if
Felt
it
very comfy.
I don't know if it happened with Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, I know Breath of the
Mm.
Wild kind of pushes you into very harsh enemies very early on, so it can be
Yeah.
very intimidating at first. I don't know if Horizon Zero Dawn is maybe a little bit more merciful in that
Yeah, it's a
regard.
bit more linear because there's so
Mm.
much more story in those
Okay.
games.
Okay.
I was talking about this with Jack the other day, actually, that like it's interesting to me that Breath of the Wild.
Jack, by the way, is
Oh yeah, Jack is my husband.
Yeah.
By the way, you don't know who he is. Also my editor, producer of the
yeah,
podcast.
also a lurker.
Yeah, mod in the channels
Well,
of both of our Twitch
yeah.
channels.
Clip specialist.
Yeah. But yeah, we were talking about the fact that Breath of the Wild is so innovative
Mm.
in the open world aspect and the gameplay and stuff.
Yeah.
But compared to other open world games, it has like very little story and very little like linear
Mm.
narrative
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Whereas like The Witcher or like Horizon Zero Dawn, Death Stranding, like these big epics are still very similar open world schemes that like clearly
Mhm.
take a lot of inspiration from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
But you have a much more linear story, which works really well for the way my brain is.
Yeah, I think that's always been, and for us that we love a
Mm.
good narrative and a good story in a game, because I think that's something
Yeah.
we have in common a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been kind of a criticism about Breath of the Wild and also Tears of the Kingdom now.
Mm-hmm.
That like it's not a game that's capable of telling a good story simply because of the structure of the game. It doesn't let you it doesn't give you a lot of space to tell a story the way you would usually tell a story, because you don't know what the player
Yeah.
is going to do first.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about this with a friend the other day. Apparently, if you do a lot of things in Tears of the Kingdom before doing the main story, it turns out that the characters kind of don't know that you've done those things. So they kind of act like they kind of give you the dialogue of like, oh, you need to do this and you need to do this. Oh, you already did that. Oh, then okay.
Yeah,
So
it skips kind of awkwardly.
it's kind of
Yeah.
awkward, yeah. And I
Mhm.
have never played The Witcher
Mm.
myself, but I've been told that if you do things in a different order or whatever, the characters actually acknowledge that, like it
Yeah.
won't be awkward
Mhm.
like that. So it's always been, to me, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is like the most innovative games have been in a very long time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wish they care more about the story. They have never cared a lot. Nintendo has never put a lot
Yeah.
of thought into Zelda's story, I think. Maybe they
And it's fine, I
yeah.
suppose. Like, we need kind of
But it
the
has so much potential, you know?
Yeah. It
Like,
would be great.
it would be great. The lore is so rich, and we've grown up with these games, and it did seem like they
Yeah.
started to care in Skyward Sword, which Skyward Sword
I was
is
about to say.
incredibly
Yeah.
linear. That's the thing. Skyward Sword is incredibly linear, and suddenly they were able to tell a better story. But then
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild came not linear at all, so they're just gonna give up with the story. So
Yeah, it's like it is definitely a Nintendo versus the other major studios and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, just their priorities are different, which I appreciate. Like, again,
Mhm.
the games that I love that are also open world but have much more rich stories rip off most of the stuff from Breath of the Wild,
Yeah.
like point blank. So I appreciate that the development and the innovative bits there is huge.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just love a good story, and sometimes when I'm watching those cutscenes in those two games, I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my god, can you imagine if we got like 10 times more of this?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it would be kind of amazing. But
It wouldn't need to be like necessarily big epic cutscenes, although that would be very nice. Because
Imagine.
at least in Hyrule Warriors, I enjoy them a lot, like all the cutscenes
Oh
and stuff.
yeah, so good.
Yeah, but that's why I love the industry of like indie gaming so much, because I think
Mm,
they try these very small teams or small groups of people who are developing games. They want to tell a story. But they don't have like the, how do you call that? El motor, like
infrastructure?
yeah, not the resources or infrastructures.
Like engines and stuff?
Yeah,
you
the
mean, or-
engine. That's what I was.
Hmm.
That's the word that I was looking for. That's the word
Oh,
I was
motor
looking for.
again. Now I'm seeing the Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I was saying. No, I was just, yeah, I remember now that indie games don't have first the resources, then the money, then the engines to do like these very epic, very graphically detailed games, but they want to
Right,
tell a
yeah.
story anyway. So they do find ways to like make the gameplay part of the story a lot of the times, and to like incorporate
Yeah.
a lot of the gameplay elements and a lot of the little things you do in like in the game loop and everything to be part of the story. Like for example,
Yeah.
and they're kind of a big thing now. But for example, Hades, which is something that I always talk. I'm never gonna stop talking about Hades. I'm obsessed. It's not linear, it is, but it's a roguelike, so everything is kind of randomly generated. So you can have conversations with characters, and then I can have that same conversation with that same character maybe like 15 hours later in the game, you know?
Wow, yeah.
So it really depends.
Completely unique.
It's completely,
Yeah.
every experience is completely unique, but at the same time, the dialogues with the other characters that remained a constant in the story changes depending on what you were able to experience first, which appear randomly in the world outside when you go fight. So something like that to me, so it tells me that the priority was the story so much, and I appreciate that so
Yeah.
much. And they were able to do something like it's randomly generated, and at the same time it feels organic, and it feels like nobody feels like it's random. Nobody in the world is acting like it's random. It's just acting
Yeah.
like that's the way that you were supposed to play. So every experience is different.
It's the coolest thing about indie games, and I feel like a broken record because I always say this, but I love so very much of this idea of like very minimalist storytelling from indie devs, and like the best example is Unpacking,
Yeah.
which literally does not have a word of dialogue,
Yeah.
but will have you crying, yelling,
Right.
like
And
you were gonna get
Unpacking-
so upset because of an object.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
Unpacking, it's also a great example of like the gameplay, the main gameplay mechanic is your main resource, your main narrative device, you know, your main storytelling device. You won't be able to know what the story is without doing exactly the main thing you're supposed to do, which is just unpack. It's
just
unpack.
like an amazing thing, and I think the indie gaming space in general is doing that in so many different ways. And it's nice to see that, like, now with cozy gaming bringing in kind of a new, more inclusive perspective in a lot of ways into the industry through having more women, more people of color, more queer people involved in content creation, in dev, in publishing, and all these different areas of the industry. We start to see these really, even more unique things because new people and more diverse people are working on these projects.
Yeah.
Which is just very cool, and definitely something I've loved by being a part of this small corner of the internet.
A lot of the indie game industry is just like people who are very passionate about this game that came up, like this idea that they came up with one day and they want to turn into a game. And, you know, it's people from all backgrounds. Like, I love hearing about games made in India, in Mexico, in like places where you don't have like these big studios. Like, you know that these people love making video games, and you can see it in the story, and you can see a completely unique perspective from a very diverse background.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to a developer from Turkey the other day, and it was just so interesting to hear their perspective of, like, they're like, oh, we know the most sales we're going to get is from Turkish customers because they're going to want to support us. Because we're like one of the few developers in this country. Yeah, it is very cool to see how, now that Unreal Engine and all these different engines are so accessible to so many different people around the world, that you can see, games pop up all over the space. And it definitely pushes the entire industry to be different and more inclusive and more innovative, because there's just so many more voices than there ever have been before.
Yeah, I think definitely the technology, you know, the fact that now we can install a video game engine on our computers and just start making a game. And we can like learn 3D art, and we can just like, you know, have Blender in our computers and learn ourselves, and all of this is just it makes, just like it happened with communication and social media and the internet, it makes it more democratic in a way.
Yeah.
More people who would otherwise not have the opportunity to make a game now might have a better opportunity to make one, which is still, you know, it's not, definitely not everybody can have a computer that can handle those kind of software or anything like that. But it is interesting when something comes up from different countries, and especially countries where there's virtually not a single studio or anything like that, not a single big studio or anything. It's also, the reason why I love indie gaming so much.
It does feel like we're getting almost closer to video games as an art form, in the same way that, like, anyone who has a voice can become a singer, or anyone who can get a paintbrush can be a painter. We're getting closer and closer to video games being less of a tech job and an art form and a creative pursuit. It means we can tell these beautiful stories and feel like you're in the shoes of someone you never would otherwise get to experience their life. And it is an amazing medium for sure.
And it's such a creative way. For example, Unpacking, that is something, that's a story that you wouldn't be able to tell the same way in a book or like in a movie.
No.
Because you are the one, I mean, it's going to sound so silly, but you are the one unpacking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
it makes
I
it
love
like
when they do
so
that,
unique,
yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing of, I would never know what it feels like to live in a post-apocalyptic world. And while I can experience that through a book in some ways, video games let me like literally walk in those shoes and deal with the consequences of my actions. And it is what makes video games so special. And I think indie games specifically continue to push that envelope of like, how can we use this very special, unique medium in a new way? That's just very cool.
Yeah. That's the reason why we're making this about indie games.
Yes. We've gushed enough.
Because we could talk about this for like hours and hours and hours and hours.
Literally. We were like, oh, this first episode's going to be like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's already been 45. But That is a really good way to segue, I think,
Yeah.
to what we envision this kind of podcast being. It's going to be a lot of this, where I think
Yeah.
it's just going to be me and Jess, like, shooting the shit for
Yeah,
45 minutes, talking about whatever theme we bring. But our big idea, I think, is to not just talk about, like, upcoming games or, like, games that are in the news,
Yeah.
but to think of video games in more of, like, the themes that they
Yeah.
bring and the trends that we might be seeing in the games that we are enjoying.
Yeah.
So I think those are kind of how our future episodes will go. The other big thing we really want to do is talk directly with indie developers and people working in the industry. So hopefully you will see our lovely
Yeah.
Jess
Yeah.
interviewing some developers in the future, perhaps.
Perhaps, mayhaps.
But also content creators, just people like
Yeah.
really seeped into the indie gaming industry. We want to make sure it's not just our voices on this podcast.
Exactly. And also because who else has a better thing to say than the people who are actually creating these games or who are very passionate about these games as well.
Exactly.
It would be lovely to have them here. So yeah, if you have any suggestions of who should we have, who should we interview, let us know.
Love suggestions.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we really want to do is do kind of what I am calling assigned gaming of the week, i.e. assigned reading, but with games, where either myself or Jess will bring kind of a game at the end of the episode that we want to suggest the community play before the next episode so we can discuss it. So yeah, look forward to that. And if you ever have ideas of games that you think Jess and I need to play, please also let us know, because that would be great.
Yep. And then we'll discuss the games together and you can join in and,
like a little book club.
Yeah,
but
like a little book
gaming
club. Like a gaming club. Does that exist? Has anybody done that? I don't know.
I feel like someone must have. I have no clue. I'm sure we're way late to the market or something.
Yeah, but hey, we're valid.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's never too
had the
late.
idea a long time ago. Okay, we just weren't very good at executing on time.
That's me with my YouTube channel. Yeah, I have the idea.
Yeah, God. I think I reached out to you in December about this, so it's been
it's been a while.
7 months.
Yeah. This has been well, not cooking. This has been sitting on the fridge for a while.
Yeah. It's mainly my fault.
No.
As usual, like completely changed my entire life and career in the span of 3 months.
It's just girl bossing. What girl boss do? Is that what what girl bosses do? You can't help it.
It's just I love stressing myself out for no reason. Makes my silly tiny worm brain happy.
Stress is your fuel.
This is why I need cozy gaming.
Yeah.
Clearly. I think to end today's inaugural episode, what is one game, Jess, that you think everyone should play?
Okay. Well, I think because I am the kind of person who values storytelling in games so much, and I think that's the thing that in the future I want to like work in stories in games and how to tell stories in games. The first game that actually made me think about this and made me think that there are so many innovative ways in which you can apply this concept of like how do you tell a story in a game in an original way that feels native to games. That is something that only games can do, was What Remains of Edith Finch. And I know it's popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's popular, and I know it's not like a groundbreaking suggestion or anything like that. But I feel like if you are interested in storytelling in any way, and if you are interested in video games and the potential for both, I think the way that What Remains of Edith Finch combines gameplay to make you feel exactly like the characters in the story it's 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's just chef's kiss. It's just wonderful. I think anybody who's interested in that should play What Remains of Edith Finch and learn from the way that the game makes you feel. And it's very short. Like you will finish it in one day. One single day, it will be finished, but you will keep thinking about it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think that's one of those games too that's almost like a gateway drug to that genre of like emotional walking simulator.
Absolutely.
Because once you've played that, you're gonna want to watch Firewatch, you're gonna want to play Donut County. Like there's so many that
but
they're
it's like,
just
it's such a special walking simulator because there are gameplay elements that are change depending on the story they're telling.
Yeah, the little
So
mini
yeah,
games,
the little
so
mini
good.
games, and I remember sometimes I suffer from dissociation.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't know if it happens to you. Your mind just completely goes blank or completely
mhm.
goes somewhere else when you're in the middle of a conversation or something. And there's a part in that game where they managed to make a mini game that feels exactly how you would feel if you dissociated. I want to talk about it more. But like I would give spoilers if
Yeah,
I did. But like that's the thing that makes What Remains of Edith Finch so special. That it's just like very
mm,
emotionally involves you in the story, and it does that by the way you play it.
yeah.
What about you? What game do you think everyone should
Yeah,
play?
it's tough because I definitely lean towards those, like, emotional games too. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely I almost said Edith Finch too.
Oh.
'Cause it's such a good recommendation,
We should
and
have
like I
agreed on
said
this first. Like, okay, I'm gonna
yeah.
say it, Finch, you're gonna say.
But I also feel like I do recommend that one so much,
Okay.
and it's the same, like, there's The Gardens Between. There's a lot of those
Hmm.
games I love that'll just make you cry.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with a slightly obvious one too, but if you have not played it yet, everyone needs to play Spiritfarer
Mm.
because I think it showcases so many different gameplay
Mm-hmm.
mechanics and will definitely help you test out whether or not you like platforming because there's like a little bit of that, a lot of fetch quest stuff, like maybe you really like fetch quest, puzzle
Yeah.
stuff,
A bit of
dialogue
farming
stuff,
too, as
building,
well.
farming, like it literally has a little bit of everything, which I
Mm-hmm.
love. But also like I have never cried so much in a video game
Oh.
than in Annie's whole section.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a game that is an experience that I feel like everyone needs to have,
Yeah.
especially if you do like cozy games and you're coming from that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely check out Spiritfarer.
I started playing Spiritfarer, but I think it doesn't get emotional until kind of later on.
Yeah, you got to give
Uh,
it time for
you gotta
sure.
give it time. So it's like a slow cooker.
Yeah, it's another one of those games about loss and grief that kind of sneaks up on you.
Oh yeah, it like surprises you suddenly with the saddest dialogue that you've ever read in your
Yeah.
life. Yeah, yeah,
I
I
was
can
making
imagine.
this joke the other day of imagine a farming simulator where your whole family is in debt at the beginning. Like, what is it about cozy games and
Yeah,
just grief
that.
and loss, like hitting
Yeah,
you on the head?
right. You know what?
It's
Actually, I was talking about this. It's so weird that you mention it because I was talking, and we can make a whole episode about this. I
yeah.
think there was someone on Twitter who was like criticizing the somehow like the sudden need to add cozy to every genre and to
Oh,
like
yeah.
people who just watch animated shows like for children or just like don't like to see violence in the media
Mm,
they consume or sex in the media they consume. And they were making a point that was like very unrealistic and kind of weird and silly about how it was just like I don't know, it was just like a capitalism. I don't know, I just
yeah,
like
I saw that.
you
It was
saw that you
weird.
saw that
It was like a marketing like
yeah,
conspiracy or something.
where we were becoming soldiers for neoliberalism or something. I don't know. I mean, I would love to have discussion with that person to learn exactly what they meant by that. But
Mm,
what my point wasn't that if that is right or wrong. It's not my
mm,
point. But I was telling a friend, like I remember that when I was going through a period of loss and grief that was like very
mm,
intense, I didn't want to consume any media that had violence, that had any graphic, I don't know, scenes or whatever. And I
yeah.
was like watching Adventure Time every single day. That was the only show I watched. I
Mm,
was playing Zelda all day, like very cozy, like
yeah.
Skyward Sword, which is very nice and cute and slow.
Mhm.
I think it's the most family friendly Zelda game
Yeah,
out of all of them
for
because
sure.
sometimes they can get a little bit spooky and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Skyward Sword, and then just I was reading The Lord of the Rings, which
Mm,
Lord of the Rings is like it's very family friendly in spite of like having there's an evil entity and all that, but it's very family friendly and it's very about friendship and about traditional things like that. And I was thinking, I think there's comfort in
mm,
media that doesn't necessarily have all these elements of like violence and like having
Yeah.
to accomplish something, for example, in video games, like having to fight a boss or having to be super fast, like we were talking before.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of comfort in that in people who might be emotionally vulnerable for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And I think cozy gaming does give you that a lot. And I don't see any reason why it shouldn't exist for people. I wish that back then, when I was going through that process, cozy gaming was a thing because I would have devoured. I know that I would have devoured
Yeah.
every single cozy game. I wish Animal Crossing was just like New Horizon was out back then. But yeah, I think it definitely, there's definitely a connection between like sad people and these very cute, cozy games where you don't need to where you don't need to worry about life. Maybe it's our way to
Yeah.
cope. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing, but yeah, it also makes some sort of natural sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's the same in that, like, I grew up reading those, like, really dramatic YA, like, romance books
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
you know? Like, Sarah Dessen was, like, my bread and butter, and every single one of her books is, like, what new trauma can she inflict on these teenagers? and I would sit in my room and I'd be up until 5 a.m. reading my
Yeah.
book and crying my eyes out or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And yeah, for whatever reason, that was just like the most comforting thing in the world.
Yeah.
And
There's
definitely
comfort and
translates to
sadness.
games.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's obviously the cozy gaming space, heavily female
Mm.
compared to the other spaces in gaming. Same with reading that kind of content, consuming that kind of TV show or movie.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a difference in men versus women.
Mm.
I don't know, but yeah, I think
Well, and even like
I can see why people are confused by it, but
yeah, and even like in queer spaces, I think that it's very more prominent, like cozy gaming and that kind of stuff than
yeah, for sure.
like I don't know. I think in the end, there's not a lot of Call of Duty. So, I mean,
No. Yeah.
there's just not a lot of it from what I've seen
Yeah, I
at least.
don't get a lot of joy from just
Yeah.
yelling at people on the internet and shooting
Yeah.
guns at each other.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I don't know. Then
Yeah,
that
no,
could be
it
super
could
cozy
be
to someone else.
yeah, it could be
you know?
super fun. It could be super fun. It could be a way to like it could be cozy. That's exactly. Like as long as it's comforting for you, I think that's the conclusion that I have with like cozy gaming in general. Like if it's comforting, if it brings you comfort, it's probably a cozy game for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing is like, let's not
Yeah.
keep people from a space because we're like, no, this is our space now. This is for farming simulators and dating sims and
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. It's like, does it need to be? Like,
Yeah.
who invents the rules?
Especially now with like all these spooky horror kind of cozy games that are
Yeah.
coming out. I think the lines are starting to get a lot more like a lot blurrier. I don't know. It's interesting to see where it's gonna go from now,
Yeah.
since it's such a new concept still.
Well, I think that might be a good place to end because it might set up our next episode where we're thinking of talking more about this idea of horror, cozy games meshing together. And I hope we've given you a little teaser of what our conversations are going to look like in the future and kind of our history with gaming. We hope that you've enjoyed. Make sure you like the podcast. I don't know. What do they do with podcasts? They follow them?
I think they follow them, yeah.
Yeah?
I think
Follow
they
the
add them or
podcast.
something to somewhere.
Review them. I don't know. Whatever you do with podcasts.
You can tell that this is our first time doing something
I
like
am
this.
also like a young millennial, and so podcasts not always my bread and butter.
Yeah. Like,
But anyway.
Jack, can you tell us what they do with the podcast?
Yeah, what should we tell them to do? We're very call to action people, clearly. Rate,
review, subscribe, and okay.
Check us out. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
If you want to get more content from us, you're like, hey, this was fun. You should check us out on our own socials. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, as Cozy Gamer Cat. And if you want more indie game news and things, check out my newsletter, Cozy Gamer News. But yeah, that's kind of me if you want to find more stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to like hear me talk more silliness, you can find me in Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch as Jess is Haunted. Not Jessie Shaunted.
Jessie Shaunted.
Not Jessie Shaunted. Jess is Haunted.
Full legal name.
Full legal name. Yeah, we stream. You stream on Wednesdays?
Oh, yeah, I don't know, man. I stream when I can.
Okay, well, that's
Fridays and
life.
Sundays, maybe.
That's
but
life on
who
Twitch.
knows?
Yeah, that's life on Twitch. Mondays and Fridays are me, probably, but like, yeah.
We're both really good at keeping a schedule.
No, we're brilliant. We're brilliant.
But definitely make sure to follow us and say hello. If you're hearing of us for the first time through the podcast,
Yeah.
that's amazing. How did you find us? That's really cool.
Yeah.
But definitely come say hi. We both have Discords and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'd love to meet you and chat.
Yeah. And make more
I think that's it. I have no clue. How do you end a podcast? Who knows?
Maybe by asking how do you end the podcast? And then you cut the podcast off.
Cool. Well, Jack, good luck with that.
Okay, I'm out.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.